So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I not have communications with the Russians.
What do I have to get involved with Putin for? I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
So, it is political. You're a communist.
No, Mr. Green. Communism is just a red herring. Like all members of the oldest profession, I'm a capitalist.
Hey, thanks for joining us. This is Mueller, She Wrote. I'm AG. I work for the federal government, so I go by a pseudonym because if I didn't, I could be in violation of the Hatch Act. Meanwhile, our president has removed the words e pluribus unum from the presidential challenge coin and replaced it with Make America Great Again and sells them online like a draft-dodging asshole that doesn't understand what a challenge coin is or how it works. With me, as always, is Jordan Coburn.
Hello, how's it going, everyone?
Awesome. And joining us today, again, the incomparable Jesse Egan.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Hey, you were a favorite, man. We got the most hits when you were on, so we're having you on again. We're using your ass. Is that cool?
All right. Cool.
All right.
I
So
like
Jaleesa is out this week, but she'll likely be back next week. And let's roll right into it with just the facts.
Yeah. I was doing my. That was my.
Jaleesa
just trying to do Jaleesa.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Jaleesa. It's a little Jaleesa.
All right, so Sunday. Let's start with Sunday. Mueller's team responded to the accusations that he obtained the GSA emails illegally. If you remember last week, Mueller had got all the GSA emails from the transition team. They were using government computers on a government server. The GSA is General, what is it? The administration. What are they called again? The government Services Administration. That's correct. And so, yeah, he got all the Government Services Administration emails from the entire transition, and he obtained them legally. Now, Mueller and his crew never usually release statements. They're pretty quiet, and I'm sure that's by design. But they actually released a statement on this pretty immediately, in pretty short order, and he said, quote, "When we have obtained emails in the course of our ongoing criminal investigation, we have secured either the account owner's consent or appropriate criminal process." Drop the word criminal in there twice. I liked that.
Criminal.
I liked that. Now,
Mueller's a smooth criminal.
now I work for the government, and I can assure you that at every endpoint, when you're logging in to any app or any program that you're using, and even when you log into Windows itself, when you log into the computer, there is a warning saying, don't expect any privacy. This is a government computer. GSA also has that. I remember Trump's lawyers were trying to claim executive privilege, but he wasn't the president yet, so haha, nice try. And then attorney-client privilege, whatever. So he's got all their emails, from the transition team. So.
Did it appear, and correct me if my memory's wrong, I thought Mueller was saying, well, we asked for these a while back, they gave it to us, that's that, you're just finding out about it, and that's kind of the issue?
Yeah.
Right? The Trump team was like, wait, they got these?
Well, some stories broke that were backed up by some of the emails that were gathered. And so, including, Flynn telling some top campaign officials that he was going to meet with Russia, Carter Page, stuff like that. So some of those stories broke, and then everyone's like, oh, how do you get those emails?
Gotcha.
And yeah, the Mueller team just simply wrote a letter of request to the GSA, and they handed them over. I think it was back in June. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
Haha. But yeah, so we talked about this a little bit last week, but it was this week that Mueller responded, and I just wanted to cover that.
Yeah.
Also, Trump said he would not fire Mueller amid rumors that he would do so on the 22nd of December, and we made it through that day, and there were no firings. So, phew.
And again, I can't remember if this is correct or not. I remember you saying he can't really fire Mueller. He can replace the Attorney General that can then replace Mueller?
That is correct. He, by law, cannot fire special counsel. And the reason why, and Jordan Parker actually looked into this for me, is there was a case in 1988, I think McMillan versus Olson. I'd have to check my notes again. But basically, the Supreme Court of the United States looked at a case like this, and they determined that special counsel, they did this in 1999, or 1988, they determined special counsel is called an inferior officer. And in Article 2 of the Constitution, the thing that all the Republicans are claiming gives him he can fire whoever he wants because he's the law, you know.
Yeah.
It says in Article 2 that he can appoint cabinet heads, and the cabinet heads are responsible for, but not, he can't dismiss or appoint inferior officers. And the Supreme Court determined that special counsel is an inferior officer and therefore is only dismissible or appointable by cabinet heads that are appointed by the president.
So it's like a no micromanaging kind of rule?
Yeah, it's kind of, you can appoint the guys who hire and fire these guys, but you can't hire and fire those guys.
Gotcha.
Just like I work for the government, Trump can't fire me. Right? That has to go through my boss. So
Right.
it's kind of, I'm an inferior officer. So it's that way. Yeah, I'm less than 6 degrees from Trump. Isn't that gross?
That's weird.
That's a terrible movie game.
Yeah. Has
So
he been in any movies with Kevin Bacon? I'm sure.
yeah, no, probably not.
Yeah, I'm sure it's somewhere.
Maybe I could probably connect him. I mean, he was in Sex and the City with what's her name, Carrie Bradshaw, Horseface.
Okay.
What's she called? And I'm sure she's been in some sort of
Something
movie
with Kevin Bacon.
that we can connect Kevin
Or
Bacon
Home
to.
Alone. Wasn't he in Home Alone 2?
He was.
Donald
And-
Trump was?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Oh,
was in
no.
Home Alone too.
And I
We'll
don't know.
figure it
I
out.
can't, yeah.
We'll think about
All
it.
of America went.
Tweet at us at Mueller She Wrote.
Yes.
Let us
What are
know.
the degrees
Give
of-
us give us 6
Connect.
degrees to Kevin Bacon from Trump.
Yeah. Take a break connecting him with Russian officials.
Yeah.
Just have a nice fun
Collusion
Kevin
with
Bacon break.
bacon.
Bacon collusion. That's my favorite kind of collusion. But yeah, that's something I also wanted to bring up, guys. Follow us on Twitter. I'm out there. We're out there tweeting, but we only have like 110 followers, so we just look totally illegitimate.
Which is
So-
already 4 times the amount of followers I have.
I know.
so-
I know.
With that, follow at Jordan's Confused. Just kidding.
One of our tweets got like 1,000 retweets, and I'm like with 110 followers.
That's insane.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, he was. They were like, "Are you going to fire Mueller?" He said no. He actually technically, he can if he wants to, but that would create a constitutional crisis. And Jordan's going to talk about constitutional crises
good,
later.
good.
What that
Yes.
means. Crisis is kind of a strong word. It kind of just means question.
Yeah.
Oh.
It creates a constitutional question, but it's pretty fucking crisis filled, if you ask
Yeah.
me. So he didn't. Nothing happened. And I will talk a little bit about what Adam Schiff said about it. He thinks that more perniciously, he says that Trump could fire Rosenstein, install somebody that would then privately tell Mueller to stop investigating things outside of the purview of the probe, including his, Russian money laundering.
Yeah.
So then also, Ivanka and Jared Kushner are being sued for a failure to disclose finances. Politico reported but did not say who the plaintiffs were. So that's fun.
The whole family's being sued by 1 million people, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Jesse, can you tilt so you're speaking to like the side of that?
Tilt it like
The
that?
side.
Like see how she's speaking like into that. There you go. And then yeah.
Like that?
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. I think I'm going to tilt my head. Like, do you want me to talk like that? Talk like that? All right.
Okay, let's continue with just the facts. On Monday, the House Intelligence Committee interviewed Goldstone. That's the big fat guy, the Russian guy who set up the June meeting in Trump Tower,
Okay.
helped set that up. So that went down this
Sounds
week.
like a Bond villain.
He kind of is.
Goldstone sets up the Russian meetings with Goldstone. Sorry.
We're gonna have to write a Bond song now for sure. Maybe we can get Adele to sing it.
Like watching Robert Timothy trying to work the knobs when I do stupid stuff like that. He's looking at it going, can you turn your head and not do that? Can you leave the room now?
Spiking the highs.
Yeah.
He's like,
Spiking the
Some
I didn't
highs,
know he was
spiking
going
the
to sing
highs.
and crap. What the hell's wrong with him?
Also on Monday, NBC reported that Trump was warned by FBI In July of 2016, a month after that meeting took place, the big, the Kushner Goldstone
See, it's
meeting. It's catchy. He was warned by the FBI that the Russians were trying to infiltrate and to please let us know if you hear anything.
Give us a little heads up, Ski.
What's really interesting is at that time, by the time the FBI was warning him, the Trump campaign was already under investigation by the FBI. And Carter Page even had a FISA warrant out for him. So that's like super funny. And like 9 people had already met with Russians. And I'm sure Trump was like, oh yeah, we'll let you know, bro.
Let you know. Haven't heard anything.
No, what you talking about? Also that day, Mueller believes he stated the Mueller team investigation says that they'll be investigating the Trump-Russia probe probably throughout the entire year of 2018. So. So them wanting to wrap it up before Christmas, bye. No, sorry.
I have a quick question about just the facts. Going back to the first fact, so is it if they're actually going, are they going to bring any sort of not charges really, but are they going to have to further investigate in any sort of formal process that the emails were obtained legally?
I'm assuming they already did,
Okay.
And that's generally something that the IG would look into, the Office of the Inspector General, just like they looked into, they're the ones who exposed Strzok and his texts that about Trump. That's kind of who investigates the investigation. And then if there's any kind of indication of any criminal wrongdoing, another special counsel could be appointed. But you really have to have criminal wrongdoing. Rosenstein testified in an open door session we all watched, I went over it, that if he's going to appoint a special prosecutor, there has to be some sort of indication of criminal activity. He's legally not allowed to appoint a special prosecutor just because the Republicans want to.
Right.
On Tuesday, McCabe, he's the deputy director of the FBI, testified before the House Intelligence Committee behind closed doors. Chuck Grassley called for McCabe to be fired. He was testified 2 days for 17 hours. And I think this is part of the effort to discredit the FBI.
Yeah. McCabe's getting tired too, huh? He's worn out.
And it didn't work because the only couple things that were if the Republicans had gotten anything on him, they'd have leaked it. But the only things that came out of that meeting that we've heard so far is that he corroborated Comey's story that he told him about Trump's loyalty ask after it happened. Because Comey told 5 or 6 senior officials at the FBI, because Comey's not an idiot. Comey's my homie. And that the dossier, the Steele dossier, was a legitimate item to be used to open an investigation. So the only 2 things that came out of that whole 17-hour charade to try to discredit the FBI are 2 things that hurt the White House. So F you. Donald Trump Jr. gave a conspiracy theory type speech, politicizing the FBI, saying they're out for his dad, and that he's claiming the FBI paid for the Steele dossier, which is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Under Comey, the super liberal FBI.
Yeah, it's weird how they're trying to paint the FBI as like some sort of weird, like the KGB or something. Or I don't know exactly what they're doing.
Democrat Hillary in the pockets of Hillary,
Yeah.
Like, you can't even smoke weed and work for the FBI. Like, I've had really good, legitimate friends try to get jobs at the FBI, and they just can't because they can't pass that background investigation. The FBI is known for being right-leaning, and nobody cares because they can do their job. Investigating isn't something that really can be... The rules that are in place at the FBI and the Department of Justice exist so that bias can't inform the investigations. And it's goes through OPM on merit-based promotions, so you can't even take anyone's political leanings into account when you hire or dismiss people. So it's the reason they're doing this is to try to discredit the FBI because they know when shit hits the fan, the only thing they're going to be able to say is fake news. That's their only defense.
Which they've been laying that groundwork.
They
a
have.
lot
When they
over the
pivoted
last
from
few
he
months.
didn't collude and he didn't conspire and he didn't break the law, he didn't obstruct, when they pivoted from that to, so what if he did? He's allowed to. He's the president, and collusion is not a crime.
It's like if Al Capone was president, kind of.
Yeah,
you
that's well. He's got a lot of mob ties. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Trump has a poster of him in the Oval Office, just hanging up on the wall.
Right next to Andrew Jackson, where
Oh,
he
boy.
berates Native Americans underneath.
Is it that old like syphilis-y picture of Al Capone?
He calls him an Italian. Like
My buddy Al.
James Clapper this week, former director of national intelligence, referred to Trump as a Russian asset. I thought that was fantastic. On Wednesday, he said, yeah, Putin knows how to use an asset.
Totally.
Ooh. That's strong words from
Yeah.
from a former director of national intelligence. On Wednesday, Senator Warner spoke on the Senate floor, basically saying that any attempt to remove Mueller would be seen as a gross abuse of power. Basically warning the Republicans, you got to stop coming after the FBI, you got to stop coming after the DOJ. It's almost criminal what you're doing, and we really need to, and if you try to do anything, if you try anything, man, we're going to call that gross abuse of power. So Warner sounding the alarm bells. Also, a subset, this is fascinating, a subset of the Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee, these are the guys who keep stonewalling everything and stacking up the interviews and making it really difficult. They want to wrap everything up by the end of the year. They're the guys who had the interviews with Rona Graff and Alex Sater in New York after the holidays, during the tax vote, so that only staffers could go, the actual House members couldn't be there. So there's a subset of the Republican members of the House Intelligence Committee, led by Devin Nunes, that asshole. They've been working on the down low in parallel to the House investigation into Russia, even using some of the top secret evidence that's gathered by the House Intel Committee for the investigation on the Russia probe, in an attempt to discredit the FBI's use of the Steele dossier. They're even trying to look for criminal activity in the FBI. They're basically getting together and having little powwows. They've probably consulted with the White House. That's not a fact. That's my theory on it. And that's just amazing to me that that's allowed to happen. They did not inform the Democrats. And that may have been what prompted Senator Warner to make that speech on the Senate floor. Resistance marches were even planned ahead of time had Trump tried to remove Mueller or Rosenstein by MoveOn.org and hashtag March for Truth, saying that if they were fired before 2 p.m., the rallies and marches would begin at 5 p.m. the same day. And if it was after 2 p.m., it would be at noon the next day. That's still a standing thing. I mean, it wasn't just for if it happened on Friday the 22nd. That's going forward. If this happens, there's going to be a lot of marches. We've got several here in San Diego that are ready to go. All right, on Thursday, documents obtained by the Mueller investigation confirm that Don McGahn, the White House lawyer, not Trump's lawyer, but the White House lawyer, communicated with Trump that Flynn had lied to the FBI and possibly violated the Logan Act. I'm going to go into depth a little bit on that one later. If you've got any questions.
Do you have a chronology of that, of when that happened?
I kind of do. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. I'm thinking some of those documents were in the transition team emails. So we'll see. Trump's attorneys met with Mueller's team, hoping to get a letter of exoneration, basically. It's that funny, right? Yeah. Like, you guys,
They're like, wait, but have you just tried asking?
Yeah. Worst they could say is no, and it's obstruction. Worst that could happen is obstruction of justice.
I just picture Trump walking in like, so where's my apology?
Yeah.
I'm here for my apology. I want a big, tremendous apology.
I want my letter. I want my letter of exoneration.
Exoneration.
I don't know what exoneration means.
And he didn't get that, huh?
No, hell no. In fact, we don't know what happened at that meeting, but two sources say, and this is not, I can't call this a fact because these are my sources. Two sources say that the lawyers, after the meeting, had a shouting match in the parking garage. My guess is they were yelling at each other like, no, you fucking tell him. I'm not telling him. No, you tell him. I'm not going back there any hand. Should we write a fake letter up and just give it to him and pat him on the head and let him go to golfing? Like,
Trump's lawyers had a shouting match afterwards, is what you heard? Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh
No, that's not reported anywhere other than sources on Twitter. So, but that's hilarious to me.
He didn't not say exoneration.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Who didn't say no?
He didn't say you're not.
Yeah.
God. That's funny.
Where's my apology letter? They write him like a little apology
I love
letter,
it.
like with a drawn
My
seal
sources
from
say the meeting ended in
special-
uproarious laughter when he mentioned being exonerated.
They were probably just like, yeah, we're here, man. I'm supposed to ask if we can get a letter. Like, sorry. How embarrassing. How embarrassing. McCabe testified that Comey told him about the Trump loyalty ask. We know that. The Trump loyalty ask was when, after that whole thing happened with Flynn, shortly after the firing, he asked Trump, do I have your loyalty? Do I have you? Are you on my side? He asked him twice.
Yeah.
And Comey's no dummy. He documented the shit out of that, and he told high-level FBI officials, 5 or 6 of them.
I think his answer to it was like, I'll give you honest loyalty, right? And he said,
Yeah.
I'll be honestly loyal. It's something like that.
I'll give you
Like,
loyal honesty
I'll
or
give
something
you-
like that.
yeah.
like I won't ever lie to you, bro.
Yeah,
Elijah Cummings also sounded his own alarm bells to protect Mueller and defend the FBI and the DOJ, calling them the cornerstones of our democracy. So I thought that was a nice little speech. Before they went into the testimony from McCabe, they got some answers out of it, questioned him a little bit. Wyden also spoke on the Senate floor, saying he would indefinitely hold the nomination of the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Intel until the Treasury complies with his request to get unclassified material from the Treasury, and any effort to obstruct would be considered a criminal act. So he also sounded some alarm bells. So we got Warner, Cummings, Schiff. Schiff is the guy who talked about he could fire Rosenstein and replace him with a guy who will, on the down low, tell him to stop investigating money laundering. And Wyden, all sounding off this week, to protect Mueller. Hashtag protect Mueller.
Yeah. Now, this all goes back to how mad Trump was at Sessions, right? He's mad that Sessions
Recused himself,
and then Rosenstein appointed. So he would love to get rid of Rosenstein, right? But he sort of
it puts him in a bad spot.
Makes him look really bad to do that. Right?
It opens up a Saturday Night Massacre situation with Nixon, and so I honestly I'm kind of on the side where I don't think he'll do any of that. I think they'll just continue this discrediting campaign of Mueller, the FBI, and the Department of Justice, which is so sad and such a shame. And it's also a danger to national security.
Yeah, it's really scary.
And, I mean, this is the path a dictator takes. They shut down the press. They shut down anybody who could have any oversight over them. They got rid of the ethics guy. Like, we don't need an ethics guy. And he's on the path, and he said his 3 favorite people are Xi Jinping, Putin, and Erdogan, who are just gross dudes.
And throwing a little Trail of Tears-y Jackson in there.
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
Gotta have some Trail of Tears.
Oh.
He's got a lot of heroes, this guy.
Gross dudes. That's my political, educated PhD evaluation.
Gross dudes.
They're gross dudes. Friday, New York Times reports the federal court in Brooklyn will subpoena Deutsche Bank for Kushner's financial records.
Yay.
I think these parallel New York state investigations going on at the same time as the federal investigations are just Mueller's insurance policy that if any pardons happen, you can't pardon a state crime. So, haha.
It's interesting how much I've learned about politics since this has happened. I didn't know that, before all this.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't know a lot of this stuff, but that's interesting that you can't pardon state crimes.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And that's one of the big reasons I wanted to do this podcast is I just think there's a lot of, regular people like you and me walking around out there who are like, it's kind of on the radar, but I mean, this is all such significant stuff, and learning about how it all kind of works and fits together, I think is crucial to if we're going to rise up and resist any of this, it's best to be armed with knowledge,
Yeah.
And the president's not the only one that can pardon people, though, right? I mean, governors, when they give the call from the governor for when you're on death row, could he put pressure on a governor to pardon a state crime?
The governor of New York?
I don't know. I'm just sort of thinking about that same route of, I can't fire this guy, so I'll get someone to fire him. I can't pardon this person. Let me get someone else to pardon.
That's a good question, and they might be able to, but the governor of New York is never going to do that.
The current governor of New York.
Right. Any current or future governor of New York would never do that. That's that's a blue, solid blue state.
Right. So if he's got any crimes in red states, he's probably good to go.
Right. I don't think the Alabama courts are going to be filing any charges against Kushner anytime soon. Although they might just hate him because he's Jewish. Also, did you know, this is an interesting fact, Chris Christie is the prosecutor who put Kushner's dad in jail.
I read that. That's so interesting.
That's why they
we
hated
talked about that on one of our really old episodes when we were talking about a meeting when Chrissy got asked to leave.
We only have 8.
When they like switched the
one of our really old years ago.
I would say around there.
I think you're right, and I for some reason that came up to my attention again, and I was like, huh.
It's great. It's a great little detail.
Saturday, Lewandowski and Bannon were called to testify in the House Intelligence Committee, but they haven't responded. Lewandowski was the other campaign manager that got fired to allow Manafort to come in because of his great work in the Ukraine for Putin and his, locker up chant that he stole from his Ukrainian.
I think you had him on Indictment Fantasy League once.
I did. He's still on my indictment pick list.
Heading that way, it looks.
He's still a top pick.
He is. He's gonna win me some cash, and that's legal. So that's it. That's just the facts, you guys. We made it through it. We made it through this week's facts.
A lot of facts.
It was a relatively sleepy week. We were all kind of worried about Friday. Like, I was just sitting there on the edge of my seat on Friday, like, what is he gonna do? What is he gonna do? But we made it.
You mentioned McCabe. I read today he said he was going to resign, or he's stepping down after next year or something.
Absolutely, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. First of all, there was an interesting thread on Twitter about the GSA emails, and what I find interesting, and no one reported on this. We're going into theory now. We've left the facts in the past, and we're going into theory land. And what had happened was Trump actually installed a lawyer named Beckler, who used to work for Giuliani's law firm, at the GSA. He was working at the GSA, and he had supposedly given Trump the wink, wink, I got all your emails, I'll keep them private. Yeah. Well, that guy died.
Oh, God.
So when
and that's how
Mueller's
team got
sent the letter,
nobody was watching.
He wasn't there. And the GSA's like, yeah, man, here you go.
Their inside guy had died, and they
inside
forgot to
dude
replace
died.
him. Yeah. But that's what Trump has forgot to sort of appoint or replace people all throughout the government, right?
Yeah, well, you're making those cuts.
It's really hard to keep all his affairs in order.
It is.
All the little
usually you have intelligent people to help you do that.
Yeah.
He must be so pissed at that guy for dying.
I know.
Right?
He's going to find him.
I will fire your whole family.
We're going to get a Ouija board.
Yeah.
And I'm
Bring
going
you
to sue him.
back and fire you again. He's going to be so pissed.
You're fired. What does he say? Yes or no?
He's Ouija boarding him that you're fired. You're fired. Oh, my God.
So that thread was interesting. And then also I spoke to Jordan a little bit about, remember how I talked about how Contreras, the judge overseeing Flynn's case, recused himself? And we thought for sure the Republicans were going to grab onto that and say, oh, he recused himself. Oh, violence inherent in the system of being repressed. Sorry, I don't know where that Holy Grail moment came from. What Jordan said was that, and I found this interesting, and this might be why the Republicans never glommed onto this, he was a FISA court judge. He used to issue FISA warrants. He may have been the guy who issued the Carter Page FISA warrant or any of the FISA warrants attached to this Russia probe back in 2016 when the FBI was investigating this. And because he has knowledge of that, he might have had to recuse himself for conflict of interest. So that's it. The end.
Interesting.
The FISA, by the way, is Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It oversees requests for surveillance warrants against foreign spies in the United States. That's the kind of shit we're dealing with this administration. Also, I wanted to talk about the list of high-level FBI employees that Comey entrusted with his the things that had the Trump conversations, basically, that he quartered in the room, asked him for his loyalty, told him to lay off Flynn, all that shit that he recorded. He told like 5 guys. And what you were talking about is McCabe, who had to testify for 17 hours behind closed doors, now has said he's going to resign. Okay, there's one gone. Another guy, Baker, He was general counsel for the FBI. He got fired. He's gone. 2 gone. They're just going down this list of Comey's corroborators and picking them off. The other 3 guys that he told are named Jim Rybicki, David Bowditch, and Carl Gaddis. So look for their names to come up in the news. I'm going to go ahead and make a pretty bold prediction that they're going to come up and try to be discredited at some point because they can also corroborate Comey's story. Haha.
Interesting.
Their testimonies still, though, are just as legitimate, right? Even if they don't still hold that position.
Correct, but that now they just have a talking point.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he quit. He got fired.
It's
He
sort of the
retired.
Court of public, whatever.
Court of public opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
So if enough Republicans come out and sort of discredit these, I guess that is a win for them, or their base follows that, and then the Congress goes along with it as well.
Congress has now a reason, a quote unquote reason, to not impeach.
Yeah.
Which is
Sorry. I wasn't disagreeing with you.
so now it basically gives Congress, the Republicans in Congress, a reason to say, no, we're not going to go for impeachment, even though all this stuff came out, because the FBI is discredited and shameful, and the DOJ is discredited and shameful, and all these people who testify and corroborate Comey's story are shameful. So no, we're not going to, because and that's basically what they're going for. And that's why these secret group of Republicans are trying to get a report together on the FBI to discredit the dossier and to basically throw the entire FBI and Department of Justice under the bus.
Maybe they'll bring in a private intelligence, that just happen to have like Russian accents.
Goldstone.
Goldstone. Call Goldstone. Bring in the private. They're called Spectre.
And then I want to talk a little bit about McGahn and our little Priebus. But first, I wanted to little Priebs. I wanted to hand the torch over here to Jordan, because I wanted you to talk about we keep hearing this, a constitutional crisis. We'll have a constitutional crisis. If Trump fires Mueller, if Trump fires Rosenstein, we have a Saturday Night Massacre. It's a constitutional crisis. So take it away.
Yes. So this has actually been brought up about a year ago when Trump was being investigated for his money laundering things, and it seems to be a term that people just throw around sort of maybe slightly haphazardly just in terms of legal jargon. I was watching a panel on Rachel Maddow's show. Sorry for John Spurlock, our ultra-conservative guy's gonna love. Oh, what a great source.
Fuck you in the heart.
Yeah, fuck you in the heart.
That was one of your comments. Was that a Twitter comment, or what was that?
Yeah, that was on our Facebook page.
One of the fans.
Yeah, one of our.
It's just
good fans.
logistically not even possible. It's just
Shout out to
such
those
a
fans.
strange.
That's
yeah,
Marquis de
such a
Sade level
strange
shit. That's
term.
what I'm talking about. You have to have, and I said you have to have a super tiny dick to fuck me in the heart valves.
Really gets you around the holidays. Just
Right in the
Yeah.
cockles.
Really fucks you
That's
right
why
in the
they're
heart,
called cockles.
Is that why?
The cockles of the heart. I don't know.
Chestnuts.
No.
I don't know.
I like that. Anyway, so on MSNBC, there's this panel, and it was a bunch of legal analysts just talking about the specifics of the term constitutional crisis. So technically, a constitutional crisis is defined as a crisis of government administration, and that is literally it. So it's very vague.
That is not a long definition.
To be fair, that was Wikipedia. But what these people were talking about was what's more likely is it's just a question of, it's a constitutional question that's arising. Not yet at a constitutional crisis level, but ultimately, I mean, I think crisis is just a hyperbolic word that maybe people are latching onto a little bit because this feels like a crisis.
It feels
but
pretty crisisy.
It does, yeah, it is pretty terrifying. But really, I think what people mean when they say that is these are issues that are bringing up things that are unprecedented, and there have not been precedents that have been set for them and tried and true in any regard. So it kind of brings up we don't know what's going to happen, really, when all of this begins to materialize further. Like Al's AG talked about, Senator Mark Warren of Virginia, top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, warned fellow senators Wednesday that it would be a quote-unquote constitutional crisis should President Trump fire special counsel Robert Mueller. So when he's saying this, I guess the interpretation of it is if he fires that creates just basically an issue where technically he can do it, but it's not in the best interest of the government or the country, and how do you really proceed?
We now have a legal question that has to be litigated But as I said, the courts, the SCOTUS has held up on several occasions that he can't. So
it's like he commits a crime, but yet we can't prosecute him for it because he's the top dog of the law and that sort of thing?
Well,
that he, constitutionally, he violated something, but there's not much we can do, and that's the crisis part of it?
well, the question or the crisis is the court has to decide if he's allowed to do that. That's the question. That's the crux of what a constitutional crisis is. Basically, somebody's done something that's usually it's never been litigated before, and there isn't an answer, and we don't know. Like, I think that there would be a constitutional crisis if Mueller were to indict a sitting president. We've never seen that happen, and it's never been litigated in the Supreme Court as to whether or not that can actually happen because he's the head of the department. He's the
So there's no real
top dog.
laws set up for this yet because it's never come up?
Well, it's in the Constitution, but it's never been argued in court.
Okay.
So it's covered by the Constitution, but the Constitution, as we know, is pretty vague. So, for example, when Roe v. Wade happened, and they sued, and they said, well, our interpretation of the Constitution is that women have a right to choose, and the court decided, yes, that's the case. And since then, they've upheld that decision every time somebody else sues, or if somebody tries to come up with a law that you can't have an abortion, or they're going to shut down abortion clinics, or make you have a real hospital environment or something, that the court will decide that they'll get sued. It'll go up to the Supreme Court, and if the Supreme Court decides to hear it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's settled in lower courts. They'll say, no, we're going to uphold this again. That's unconstitutional.
Okay, so forgive my confusion. Jordan, would this be an example like when he says transgenders can't be in the military or something via tweet, and then the courts come back and say that's not cool, or a travel ban gets overthrown? Would that be a constitutional crisis where he's doing something unprecedented like that, and then they have to litigate it?
No, I don't think so. Jordan, what would you say?
Yeah, I do think that to that question, a lot of the times these issues arise is overreaching executive, actions that he's taking. So him saying that I can do this, and then in the Constitution maybe it's vague or it's not laid out exactly what he can do, and then that's why it goes to Supreme Courts for them to
They're like, we're not
get
so
it,
sure
try to
you can.
But I
set
think
a
what you're
precedent
asking is
for that.
why are they putting the tag constitutional crisis specifically on firing special counsel and not on these other
80
asshole
things
moves?
that he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if it's going to lead up to his impeachment, where the constitutional crisis piece really comes in, or constitutional question, is if the House moves to impeach him after, let's say, all of this, goes well, relatively, and then they move to impeach him, and then he just says no. Also, that's another thing that could happen too, which has never happened before either.
He just rejects
And
that
that's-
too, like, and
yeah,
I'm sitting on this throne.
There's multiple times I think that people are predicting a constitutional question is going to arise throughout this, and there isn't a set precedent of how to proceed legally and how to really litigate something like that, because it's just
Also,
never
I
been
guess a
done before.
crisis would be if they present this evidence to Congress and then they decide to just ignore it, or not impeach him based on maybe there's overwhelming evidence. I would think that would qualify as a crisis.
I think that
as
feeling where everyone has this idea that we have three branches of government that are all supposed to be checking themselves equally, and that's how the wheel keeps going round in a way that we're all comfortable. When something happens and it's your gut feeling is, oh, clearly this is wrong, this should be wrong, but then there's all these, technically there's no real technical answers for it, and then you get this outcome that's very scary to a lot of people and seems blatantly wrong, and then the other side is saying, oh no, it's totally fine. That's, I think, a constitutional question. And then as far as just the national people goes, it seems like a crisis at that point. It's scary.
And the other thing that I think that a lot of Republicans don't realize is if he fires Mueller, the special counsel has to be replaced and the investigation has to continue. So firing Mueller doesn't get rid of all of his problems. In fact, I think it just adds to it. So that's why I think that he's not going to do it.
They would continue the investigation along the same lines, or do you think they would revise it and say, okay, we can't look into any of your real estate?
You can't revise what the original scope was, but you can. Basically, what happens is if Mueller wants to investigate money laundering, for example, it's within his purview to do so, but he does have to bring he has to bring all these things he wants to investigate to the deputy attorney general, who then says yes, yes, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And he hasn't said no to him on anything yet, as he testified to. I'm not just making that up.
Sure.
So what could conceivably happen, as Adam Schiff was suggesting, is that somebody could be replaced replace Rosenstein with somebody who would tell him no.
Right.
But the original Russia probe interfering with the elections cannot be stopped. It's how it was written. That was the scope, and it was because he fired Comey.
Yeah.
So this podcast may change its name, but it will continue. It may not be Mueller she wrote, but it'll be somebody she wrote.
Then it'll be weird because it doesn't make sense anymore with the murder she
we'll
wrote
have to rebrand.
trope, and I have to have a new logo made. It was like when I had two turtles named Laverne and Shirley, and Laverne died, and I just had a turtle named Shirley, and like, what is that? Thanks for doing. Oh, do you have more?
Yeah, sorry, really quick. So then on the other side of the coin, there are people that I've been reading, and this is a Democrat actually that said this, and it's Alan Dershowitz. Do you know him?
Yep.
Okay. My first time learning about this guy, but he went on Fox News. Also was brought on as a liberal, which really pisses me off because that's just such. Yeah, is he such a I try to do as much research as I can on this guy just to try to justify, I guess, how he's being brought on. I don't know. He's just very whatever, I digress. I'm sorry. I was going to go into Israel-Palestine, but that's neither here nor there right now.
Stay in the scope, special counsel.
I'm sorry. But he went on Fox News, and he was making the case that if Trump does get charged, it would be a constitutional crisis because he so strongly believes that Trump does have the ability to direct what Comey is supposed to investigate and what he's not supposed to investigate. And he's making this case he feels so strongly about maintaining the fabric of our Constitution that he cannot be charged with obstruction of justice because there's nothing so far that has been technically illegal that he's done. And that's scary.
I mean, how do you keep your eyes closed to so much stuff?
It's called money, Jesse.
Yeah.
It's called money.
Lay some $100 bills on my eyelids.
Here's a little theory I've got. I think Donald Trump is blackmailing the members of the House Intelligence Committee and some of the other Republicans because he's got dirt on him. If you remember, Russia didn't only hack the DNC, they hacked the RNC.
Yeah.
I think Trump has that juice from Julian Assange via Putin, and he's holding that over their heads. Did you hear him lay on the compliments during that tax bill Rose Garden thing? We are the best. Trump, you're the best, brightest man the world has ever seen, and I love you, and I want to lick your butthole.
They had that one where his cabinet was at the table, and they have to go around and compliment him. And,
yeah.
Right.
One nice thing about
why they're so happy that they're part of the team.
He's got dirt on these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
That's why he got the tax bill through. That's why Corker flipped. That's why they're all trying to discredit the DOJ and the FBI. I think he's got dirt on these guys. Another interesting thing that happened was that I wanted to talk a little bit about who Alex Sater is. He's one of the guys that they just kind of crammed the interview with and put it off to New York with some staffers because it wasn't important. Sater's like an ex-mafia guy. He was arrested a while back for a huge, like $40 million stock scheme or something. And he would have gone to jail for a really long time, but he cut a deal with the FBI and became a witness for them. And they helped, and he was infiltrating the mob on their behalf. And he was also doing land deals with Donald Trump this whole time. So this is a big, and a lot of these land deals went through or were kind of eased off on by the mafia. There were definitely some payola going on there, probably with Russian money funneled through Deutsche Bank, which is why we need his tax returns and why they were subpoenaed in the first place. So all this is happening, and this is an important dude, and they're just sending House Intelligence Committee staffers on. They interviewed him the day that they had to be there to vote on the tax bill, so that the actual, staffers, the actual representatives for the House Intelligence Committee couldn't ask this guy questions. And then Rona Graff has been the gatekeeper for Trump since, up to when Hope Hicks took over, and I think she's still there. She's the person who would send and receive emails on behalf of Donald Trump and all of his land deals and real estate deals for the last 3 decades. And she got shoved off onto a Friday after Congress had left. We aren't sure if some of the Democrats showed up to that interview anyway. All we know is that it was because the session ended on Thursday, and so they're on vacation. I'm hoping some of the Democrats went to New York to be there, but I don't know why they did this in New York. I'm hoping it's maybe because the attorneys general in New York want to be there so that they can bring state charges.
Yeah.
But I don't know. other than just to make it really difficult. So that I thought was really interesting. And then also, a little thread I found on Twitter was talking about McGahn. Now, McGahn again. He is the senior White House attorney. He is not Trump's lawyer. That's an important distinction because basically the White House has been refusing to answer the question about when Trump knew Flynn lied to the FBI and broke the law. That's the big ask. What did he know? When did he know it? The whole Nixon echoes. When did Trump know, right? And we've heard McGahn say he told him and all this other stuff. And the reason that they don't want to nail down this date is because it would provide evidence of corrupt intent to obstruct justice. And that's the hard part to prove when you're doing an obstruction of justice case. Rachel Maddow did a great breakdown. She's like, let's say you backed your van out of a driveway. You saw a guy run down the street, and then you saw two guys run after him, and you backed your van out of the driveway to stop those two guys from chasing that guy. But then later you found out that those two guys were cops, and that guy just robbed a bank. You don't have any culpability because you didn't know. But if that's your friend running down the street and you know he robbed the bank and you backed the car into the cops, you are now criminally liable. That shows corrupt intent, and that is the part that they're trying to nail down on Trump.
And I'm sure Trump was just trying to save his friend from two big mean guys.
So I thought that was a really well done analogy that Rachel put out there. I love you, Rachel. My husband has a crush on you, and I have a crush on Anderson Cooper, so we're not getting anywhere. Yeah, so we just watch our unrequited crushes every day on television. So yeah, that's why the White House doesn't want to say, and that's why it was so dumb when he tweeted that I fired Flynn because he lied to the FBI, because you just admitted you just proved in obstruction of justice corrupt intent. You knew when you fired Comey that he was investigating Flynn for actual crimes. So according to a report released this week, and this is only coming out from one news source. It hasn't been corroborated by any other news sources, and I want to make that clear. But according to a report that came out this week, McGahn researched whether Flynn lied or violated the Logan Act after he met with Sally Yates. He researched. So that means he knew, and that he also told Trump, the report came out that he told Trump in an email, in writing, that he knew Flynn is possibly lied to the FBI and could have been guilty of violating the Logan Act because Sally Yates told me. Oh, and then Sally Yates ended up being fired. Interesting. Well, the White House blamed McGahn for not warning. When they finally did, 18 days later, when they did fire Flynn, when they were like, why did you wait so long? Yeah. They said that McGahn told them everything was fine. They blamed McGahn for not warning Trump about Flynn, which probably, if I were McGahn, pissed him off.
Oh, yeah.
So McGahn put this all in writing and turned it over to Mueller. Now, what's interesting is at the same time, Reince Priebus, I think he's also on my fantasy indictment league, my fantasy indictment team. Priebus blamed McGahn, saying in February on Meet the Press that McGahn told them Flynn had done nothing wrong. Not just didn't warn them, but said Flynn didn't do anything wrong. So Priebus already met with Mueller.
Was that White House lawyer the same White House lawyer for Obama?
No, I don't think so. No, Trump appointed.
Trump appoints that lawyer.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether it's the White House lawyer or not, it's a
Trump
Trump
appointed
appointee.
McGahn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you can't imagine an Obama lawyer would.
No.
No.
So Priebus had already met with Mueller by then. So did Priebus lie to Mueller about McGahn? Did Priebus also say what he said to Meet the Press? Did he say McGahn told us everything was fine? If he did lie, and he said McGahn told them Flynn did nothing wrong, he'd be calling McGahn a liar, right?
This liar. Come again?
Yeah. Come again. What's interesting is McGahn and Priebus have the same lawyer. Okay? Yes, the White House lawyer has a lawyer. Okay. I know what you're thinking. So what that means is that if Priebus and McGahn have conflicting stories, that attorney can't represent both of them because it's a conflict of interest. Oh. That means they're singing from the same sheet of music, which means Priebus flipped on Donnie. Priebus told Mueller. He had to tell him the same thing McGahn told him. So Priebus told Mueller, actually, McGahn did tell us that he lied to the FBI and maybe violated the Logan Act. That is just bolstering So now not only do you have McGahn, you have Priebus saying he knew, and you have Comey, his testimony and all of his corroborators. So now you're actually looking at, I think, enough evidence of corrupt intent, of obstruction of justice. And they have the physical documented evidence of this, that McGahn researched the Logan Act and he looked to see whether Flynn had lied to the FBI, and the communications that he did, in fact, tell Trump, Priebus, Pence. Somebody's got all those GSA emails. So, So that, again, there's only one place reporting that. So I thought that was fantastic.
That is.
So that's conjecture right now. We're not sure.
That was one report that came out.
Yeah.
Potential reliable sources. Kind of like how that, just today, I think there's news that in a meeting, Trump called Haitians, said all Haitians have AIDS, and that...
Today he said that?
Yeah, and that Nigerians, if they ever got here, they would just never want to go back to their huts in Africa.
I don't know what he's talking about. They're all princes.
There were two. And Michael Castleberry is all, Nigeria, yeah, he just pronounced it wrong.
All the time.
And I would say I'm not surprised that he said any of this. The only thing I'm surprised about is that he knew Nigeria was in Africa.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that surprises me.
He didn't really say.
There were two sources in the meeting that said that.
That said all Haitians have AIDS?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Like 20,000 Haitians came over, and his response was, "Ugh, they all have AIDS."
Oh my God.
It sounds very familiar. It sounds very,
Yeah, I feel like that's something he's already said.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Make America great again.
Yeah.
Taking E pluribus unum off of the challenge coin. The E pluribus unum, our motto, one from many, one, Latin, meaning we stand tall on our diversity. We are a nation of many.
Are they going to change the line in Wizard of Oz now?
Which one?
It's going to be "Make America Great." The Wizard of Oz, didn't he say "E pluribus unum"
yes,
was like the inventor guy?
He's gonna, I want to change it in everything.
Yes.
I don't want.
Go back.
I don't want any diversity
David
anywhere.
Dorothy, we're going to make America great again.
We're gonna make it
My
white
little
again.
dog too.
Your little dog too.
I'm surprised he doesn't actually have a bromance with North Korea. That would be expected.
Yeah. Maybe they're just too
He's
similar.
like, that guy's actually all right.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're friends with
maybe.
North Korea, you don't have a reason to play with your dick rockets.
True.
So you can't do that. You have
He
to
did
have
say,
some.
I would never call him small and tiny and dumb and whatever.
And fat.
Fat and old and dumb. I wanted to be good friends, but
I
I
wouldn't-
guess that won't happen.
I wouldn't do that. Also today, interestingly enough, Donnie tweeted.
All Africans have gonorrhea. Is that what he's doing?
Africans have gonorrhea.
People from Egypt have malaria.
He's just attributing all sexually transmitted
Just-
diseases
yeah.
to different populations.
Malaria's not. I don't know why I came up with that one.
Here's some
Got that
tweets
sex malaria.
from an hour ago. Remember, the Republicans are 5-0 in congressional races this year. In the Senate, I said Roy Moore would lose in Alabama.
Why are you bringing up?
And I supported Luther Strange, and Roy lost.
They both lost.
He supported Roy Moore, like with his mouth. That's gross. I just meant with his words. Virginia candidate was not a Trumper, and he lost. Good Republican candidates win big. His staffers right now are telling him, please don't campaign for Republicans in 2018 because you are political poison, and he probably threw a fucking fit, and that's why he's tweeting this. And then he also tweeted, this is pretty messed up. This one's pretty messed up. How can FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, the man in charge along with Leakin' James Comey of the...
Leaking James Comey.
He's got gonorrhea.
He's leaking. Oh, no.
Leakin' James Comey of the phony Hillary Clinton investigation, including her 33,000 illegally deleted emails.
I mean, the one that helped you win the election.
How can McCabe be given $700,000 for his wife's campaign by Clinton puppets during an investigation? And then he said, FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is racing the clock to retire with full benefits. 90 days to go, question mark? Is he going to fire the Deputy Director of the FBI because when he fired the director, that went so well for him? Wow, FBI lawyer James Baker was reassigned, according to Fox News. He tweeted that today.
Was that
This-
all one tweet? Did they
No.
double the number of characters just
They
for
did,
Trump, by
yeah.
the way?
No, that was 3 tweets.
Like,
Yeah,
we're
just to
gonna need
let him.
280 characters for this windbag.
Yeah, we need longer rope for the president to hang himself with.
Is that
Yeah.
what they did? They're
I
like,
don't know.
He could say more against himself if he just...
But today, FBI lawyer James Baker reassigned. We knew that days ago, and he knew that probably because he orchestrated it. He's a lying sack of fat shit, and I hate his guts. But there's no bias on this show. And I just wanted
Just
to
the
thank everybody
facts.
for tuning in. Please follow us on Twitter. We need to look a little more legitimate than we do. I might even put in our little bio, like, we're brand new. Like in training. You know how people were in training?
Training
I
podcast.
wore mine for like 2 years. Next week, it's going to be a quiet week. It's the week between Christmas and the New Year's. Donnie will be tweeting, I'm sure, so that might have some interesting effects. I'm sure the hits will keep coming.
What's he going to tweet for Christmas? My God, you know? Merry Christmas to everybody except the Muslims and the Jews and the Mexicans and all the Haitians with AIDS.
Yeah. No, they don't celebrate Christmas. They celebrate AIDS.
AIDS Day. Oh, my God.
He's such a horrible, horrible man.
Yeah.
But you know, if there's any news next week, and I'm sure there will be, like I said, the hits keep coming. This doesn't slow down, you guys, and it should be because it's the holidays. But we'll see, and we'll talk to you next week. So,
I've been Jordan Coburn.
I've been Jesse Egan.
I'm AG. Thank you so much for joining us again, Jesse. You were awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone have a happy holidays.
You
Merry
too.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We can say it again.
We can say it now
We
because
couldn't say it
because
except
before
we
we
could.
couldn't say it.
I could never say it.
Kintne. I couldn't say it.
Oh, I got beat up at CVS the other day for trying to say it.
You
Now I
did
can say
not.
it. No, of course not.
Okay. All right. Well, we love you, and thank you for listening, you guys. Please subscribe to us on Podbean because we get free stuff. Thank you. Podbean.
All right.
All right. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
Thanks.